Now, here's what's going to happen next. We are going to go ahead and dismiss the children to game time now. This is not Sunday school. This is the lead up to Sunday school. They're going to have some snacks so they are not starving when church is over. They're going to run around and get all tired out for you when you get home later. And then while you adults are heading to your community groups around 11, the kids are going to head to their Sunday school classes with full stomachs and their energy all played out. So if you are one of our children's volunteers this week, please stand up so the kids can make their way over to you now. And as for the rest of you, you are stuck with me. So I hope that everybody is having a great Father's Day so far. I know we're only, 10 hours and 28 minutes into Father's Day, but you've probably only been awake for 2 or 3 hours, right? So I hope the first 2 or 3 hours of your Father's Day have been great, and I hope they just get better throughout the rest of today. If your kids are grown, I hope that they call you. If they don't call you, take some comfort in the fact that when you were 18, when you were 20, maybe even when you were 30, you probably didn't call your parents nearly as much as you should have either, right? So they'll grow out of it. They'll learn to appreciate you. Now, today being Father's Day, we want to talk about fatherhood. We're in a series through the book of Proverbs, and Proverbs has a lot to say about fatherhood. So I thought it made sense to talk about what the Proverbs say about fatherhood on Father's Day. I wasn't here on Mother's Day. I apologize. I was halfway across the world. But if I had been here on Mother's Day, I would have talked about what the Proverbs have to say about motherhood on Mother's Day. We are going to get to that in a future week. But so for this morning, just so that you know, mothers in the audience, I'm not leaving you out. I'm not ignoring you. You matter too. We're going to talk about you later. But we're going to talk about what God's word has to say about fatherhood. Today I want to talk to the fathers in the room in a really unique and specific way. Fathers, you are a blessing. There was actually a really good chance that a lot of us have not heard that today. There's a really good chance that a lot of us have never heard that in our lives. But fathers, you are a blessing. And I can say that with or without a Bible in my hand, because I've had the experience of having a father. Know what I'm talking about? My father has blessed me immensely through the years just through his presence. I can make a list of all the things he did right. I can tell you all the ways that my own dad was a good father, all the ways that he did things that helped me to flourish rather than fall apart, that set me up to thrive rather than wither as I got older. And we will talk about those things. But before we get to any of that, I just want to talk about the way that he has blessed me through his presence as I've been growing up. So many of my early memories are memories of my dad taking me to football games, especially later in the season, in the playoffs. Sometimes we would get on the Salina bus to go to an away game, right? When a game was far enough away, 2-3 hours, sometimes they'd like charter a bus that would take everybody out there, and you'd stop at a restaurant along the way and stuff like that. And when we'd stop at that restaurant, my dad would pull out a piece of paper or something like that, and we'd just kind of, I don't know, I'd write a little book. I always wrote dumb children's books when I was a kid. Don't know why. It was just a thing that I did. Remember Little Critter? Remember those? Little Critter books? I was obsessed with those. as a kid. And so sometimes we would I would dictate a little critter book to him and he would write it and he'd draw out some pictures and stuff like that. We'd go to the game. We'd get like a hot dog at the game or hot chocolate. For some reason, as a kid, I thought that the football field hot chocolate was the best thing in the world. As I've grown up, I've learned it's the worst thing in the world. But hey, man, I was 6, right? But we'd go to the football game, and all throughout the game, I would ask him a million questions. I'm sure it was very distracting. I don't even think he got to watch the game when it was just me and him, but he was ministering to me through his presence. At one point, just the way that his work schedule flew, he would take me to school in the mornings, and on the way, we would stop at this donut shop that was run by a handful of extremely mean women. I don't know what the deal was. I guess they were upset. They had to be up at like 2:30 to get the donuts ready or something like that. But we would get donuts, and they had this giant box TV. Remember the day before flat screens? There was this giant, like 480-pound box TV just in the corner of the donut shop, and they would always have like, the morning news on or something, and we just watched the little box TV in the corner while we ate donuts, and then he'd take me on to school. He was working sometimes 12, 13, 14-hour shifts, depending on the season. He worked at Terminex, so in swarm season, the days were brutal, but even in that period, he would always make sure there was that 30, 45 minutes where we would be together and talk. He was just there. He was ministering to me through his presence. When I got a little bit older, he would take me to the movie theater. It seemed like almost every week. He would take me to see stuff that I'm 99% sure he had zero interest in, just to be present with me. He would drive me to work with him sometimes on the weekends if he had to, if my mom was on a business trip or something like that. And then afterwards, we'd go to the toy store. We'd go to the electronics store or something like that just to look at stuff. I'm pretty sure he did not care about Pokemon toys. What he cared about was me. We could do this all day. He was a blessing to me just through his presence. Even if he hadn't done anything else as a father, he would already have done 75% of the work of parenting, wouldn't he? Listen, you fathers are already radically blessing your children just by being present. And I'll prove it to you. Every single child psychologist, every single social scientist, every single data analyst in the world has sounded the alarm about exactly the same thing again and again and again. And that is what they call the epidemic of absent fathers. Know what I'm talking about when I say that? Some of you experienced the epidemic of absent fathers, didn't you? Here's a really unfortunate reality. As Americans, we live in a culture of sperm donors. We need a culture of fathers. Today in America, 1 in 4 fathers abandon their children. I'm not talking about divorce. I'm not talking about co-parenting. I'm not talking about being with mom sometimes, being with dad sometimes. That is not what I'm talking about here. 1 in 4 fathers literally abandon their children. 1 in 4 fathers literally go out for milk and do not come back in America in 2025. 17.6 million children in the U.S. have an absent father. America is a fatherless country. And that explains a whole lot of things that are going on right now, doesn't it? Because what they found through the years analyzing families, analyzing crime, analyzing children's performance in school, children's mental health, children's behavior, and so on and so forth, is this. What they found consistently across the board is that absent, distant, or abusive fathers destroy. There's a mountain of data that tells this story over and over and over again. When fathers abandon their children, it puts them at a radically higher risk of suffering from chronic depression. They become statistically more likely to drop out of school, to have extreme forms of aggression, to grow up and commit domestic violence, to commit violent crimes when they reach adulthood, or even end up in a juvenile detention center as a kid or as a teenager. 85%. Remember this number. 85% of all incarcerated men were abandoned by their fathers as children. Again, I'm not talking about divorce. I'm not talking about co-parenting. I'm talking about abandonment. And more than anything, what they found is that men who were abandoned by their own fathers as kids are radically more likely to abandon their children as adults. It's a cycle. Absent, distant, or abusive fathers destroy. And that means what? That means the fact that you are here right now is already 75% of the battle. You didn't leave. You're here. You're doing it. You got a C+ already. Because at exactly the same time and in exactly the same way, every single child psychologist, every single social scientist, every single data analyst will tell you active, engaged, present fathers cultivate. Cultivate what? Cultivate everything. That's an agricultural term. As a present father, as an engaged father, as an active father, you are planting the seeds of almost everything your children need to be able to grow into full adult humans who are capable of thriving and capable of flourishing as adults. They found consistently when fathers stick around, not flawless fathers, not perfect fathers, not expert fathers, present fathers. Fathers who were there. Fathers who were just doing their best. Fathers who were just trying to figure it out. Fathers who are mostly making it up as they're going along, right? That's what I've been told by every other parent that I know. They're like, yeah, no, we make up most of it as we go along. There's not really a manual. You are cultivating and planting the seeds for your children to flourish. You are tilling the fields of your child's heart and helping them to grow into something beautiful simply by being there. And so here's the point. You fathers have already done the single biggest thing you can do to bless and protect and raise up your children. You are here. You are ministering to them through your presence. So the question we need to ask is, how does this happen? How do fathers bless their children? What did God create us to do? What did God create us to be as fathers? And how has He called us to pour into our children and minister to them through our presence? I feel kind of silly preaching most of this sermon because literally my child hasn't actually come out of the oven yet, right? He's not fully cooked. So I don't have any personal experience actively fathering somebody. I'm a father to be. So I can't tell you any stories about how this one time my son did this, and then I did this, and then this happened, and so on and so forth. All I can talk about is what God's word says and what every single study, every bit of research about children and fathers and families tells us. And so bear with me. Try not to glaze over because some guy who's never technically parented a child is talking. And let's trek through what God's word has to say about all of these things. Sound good? All right. Here we go. Number one, Proverbs says, you bless your children by pouring your wisdom into them. Know what I'm talking about when I say that? You are blessing your children every single time you pour your wisdom into them. Proverbs 10 verse 1 says, a wise son makes a glad father, but a foolish son is a sorrow to his mother. How do you get a wise son? It's not a roll of the dice, is it? You get a wise son or a wise daughter by doing your best to pour your wisdom into them. You get a son or a daughter who's not a sorrow to his mother, right? By pouring as much of your wisdom as you can through them. And here's the thing. You have way more wisdom than you think you do. Know what I'm talking about? You have so much more wisdom than you think you have as a father. You might not be as wise or profound as some sage or something like that, right? You might not be as wise or profound as that one older father that you really look up to at your kid's school or in your neighborhood or whatever. You may not be as wise or profound or whatever as your own father or your grandfather or whatever. But look, your kids don't need your father, man. Your kids need you. And you have wisdom you didn't even know you had. Here's why. You've lived in this fallen and broken world for a while. This world has given you more black eyes than you can imagine, right? This world has beaten you up relentlessly in a whole bunch of different ways, hasn't it? You've made decisions that blew up in your face. You've been hurt, and you've experienced joy. You've experienced love. You've had things that didn't work out, and you've had things that really worked out. You had success. You've flourished in some ways. You've seen beautiful things happen as a result of your commitment, your work, your devotion, and so forth. And look, your kids can learn from that stuff. It may not be in a book. That doesn't mean it's not valid. They can learn from your successes, and they can learn from your failures. If you failed at your dreams, tell your kids about it. What are you embarrassed about? If you failed at your dreams, you can talk to them about why you failed, how you failed, what you did wrong. You can teach them how not to do the same thing. Your kids learn just as much from your failures as they do from your success. But you should absolutely teach them your success. Teach your kids how to run the family business, if there is one. They don't have to take it over when they get older, but they're better off knowing how to run it than not, aren't they? They can start their own business with the skills that you teach them. Teach them how to hunt, if that's something you do. Teach them how to fish, if that is something you do. If you're a lawyer, man, teach them how to be a lawyer. They don't have to be a lawyer, but it's better to know how to be a lawyer than not know how to be a lawyer, isn't it? Teach them how to drive a commercial truck if you're a commercial truck driver. Teach them how to fit pipes if you're a professional pipe fitter. Teach them how to work in a cubicle and not assassinate the supervisor if you're an office worker, right? Whatever it is, pass your wisdom onto them. They'll get other types of wisdom from other people through their life. The thing they need from you is yours. Because when you do these things, you are blessing your children so much more than you know. It's number one. You bless your children by pouring your wisdom into them. Here's number two. You bless your children by teaching them how to live as adults. This one is a rarity nowadays. You bless your children by teaching them how to live as adults. I love Proverbs 1, verses 8 and 9. It says, "Hear, my son, your father's instruction, and forsake not your mother's teaching." We're going to talk about that when we talk about moms. They are a graceful garland for your head, pendants for your neck. That says what? It says you have the power to instruct your children. Right now, your kids are 3, or your kids are 10, or your kids are 15, or whatever. Enjoy them at the stage they're at, right? Don't try to rush them to the next stage yet. I'm about to enjoy my child as a newborn. I am not going to enjoy sleeping because that's not going to happen, but I am going to enjoy this little dude. My child will be a newborn, but at exactly the same time, he's not just a newborn. He's a future 30-year-old. He's a future 50-year-old. He's a future 80-year-old. And with each passing year as he develops, he'll be ready to inch just a tiny bit closer to adulthood, right? He'll be ready for some things when he's 7 that he is not going to be ready for on September 2nd, the day after he's supposed to be born, right? Kids under 7 are literally not developmentally ready for academics. This is science we've known for about 40 years. I don't know why preschools keep trying to shove flashcards and math tables down their throat to prepare them to make the grade in kindergarten. What grade? It's kindergarten, right? to prepare them to make the grade in first grade, just leave them alone. Let them play. That's literally the primary way they learn. Prior to 7. But he'll be ready for things when he's 10 that he is not ready for when he's 7, right? He'll be ready for things when he's 15 that he is not ready for when he's 10. Every step of the way. Part of how I bless him as a father is preparing him for adulthood to whatever extent he's ready for at the moment. As fathers, we bless our children by teaching them how to adult. We bless our children by intentionally being there, taking them under our wing, raising them up from one level of maturity to the next, one level of responsibility to the next, one level of autonomy and freedom and self-sufficiency and independence to the next. But here's the really hard thing that we have to recognize, and this goes against almost all of the terrible parenting advice that we've gotten beginning in about the 80s onward. You have to give kids independence for them to learn independence. This contradicts almost everything we've been told by the parenting books you can buy at the airport for about 40 years. But you literally cannot raise an independent, self-sufficient, mature adult if you keep them under lock and key all the way until they're 18. Again, I know I'm not a personally active parent yet. I know. But again, every single study says exactly the same thing. And just to be clear, almost every successful parent says exactly the same thing. If you control your child for 18 years, and the moment you let them off the leash, they're going to fall apart. And some of us have seen that with our own kids, right? If you've seen that with your own kids, do me a favor, warn the younger parents about it. I don't have the experience. You have the experience. If you've seen this with your own kids, go back this up to the younger parents here. Because what's happened is that my whole generation, I'm a younger millennial, my whole generation, and then just after me, the Gen Z generation, right? Just to be clear, my generation was not the one eating Tide Pods. It was the next one, okay? But multiple back-to-back generations drift from one manager, one master to another, looking for somebody to tell us what to do, looking for someone to tell us how to be adults, and never finding it. They found out millennials and Gen Z on an academic level are the most intelligent generations America has ever produced, and we are the least self-sufficient generations America has ever produced. And it's not just because of technology. It is not just because of the conveniences. It's because of parenting. We were parented to be helpless little academics machines. We were parented to do 3 and 4 hours of homework every night and never learn how to send mail. Never learn how to fill out a doctor form. Never learn how to set up our utilities. Never learn how to maintain basic relationships. Never learn how to do any of the things that actually make your life good. And so we're super smart and absolutely directionless. We were parented to be this way. Here's the thing. You can stop that. You can break that cycle. You can give your child the profound blessing of learning how to be in charge of themselves, how to be responsible for themselves, how to be independent, how to be capable. You can teach your child that they can handle basically anything. You know what I'm talking about? You can teach your child that whatever that hard thing that pops up in front of them is, they can actually handle it. You can teach your kids that every roadblock in front of them can be overcome. You can teach their kids that they do have enough and that they are enough. You are blessing your children every time you teach them just a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more how to live as adults. It's number 2. Here's number 3. You bless your children by preparing them to build a family of their own. You are blessing your children by preparing them to build a family of their own. Proverbs 17:6 says, grandchildren are the crown of the age, and the glory of children is their fathers. Question: how do you get grandchildren? You get grandchildren when your children have children, right? How do they get children of their own? We don't need the gory details. They start a family of their own. Your son goes out and finds a good woman, right? Your son goes out and finds a godly woman, a trustworthy woman, a responsible woman, and he starts a covenant relationship with her. We call that marriage. He commits himself faithfully to her, and then they multiply. Your daughter goes out and finds a good man, a man who is not going to be part of the 1 in 4 who abandons their children on a Tuesday afternoon, a man who won't lie to her or push her around, a man who will stick with a job and show up for work. She finds a man who is worthy of her. And then she starts a covenant relationship with him. We call that marriage. And then they multiply. But there's a problem. We don't just naturally know how to do any of those things. You don't naturally know how to weld, do you? Anybody here literally come out of the womb just knowing how to like weld something together? You don't just naturally know how to effectively plant a really high maintenance tree and then care for it so that it starts to bear fruit and everything like that, do we? Anybody just come straight out of the womb with this instinctive knowledge of how to do all that stuff? No. Were you born knowing how to do trigonometry? Were you born knowing how to do civil engineering? Why on earth would you be born just knowing how to build a healthy family? This is insane. We literally expect ourselves to just naturally be able to do this. We expect ourselves to just be able to walk in and know exactly what to do. Why would that be the case? And so what? We need someone to teach us how to do this. We need someone to teach us how to build a family that gives life rather than deals out death, that creates a safe environment rather than constant chaos and crisis and fear and disorder. How do kids learn how to build a family of their own? They learn from you. They learn by seeing you model it, by watching you lead your family alongside your wife. They learn by watching you create a place of genuine safety and love and stability and care. When they see you build a household where they can genuinely thrive, and then you say, listen, here's how I did this. Here's how your mother and I built this. And here's how you can build it too. That's pathway number one. Here's pathway number two. They also learn how to build a family of their own from your mistakes. Your kids learn just as much from your marriages that didn't work out as they do from the ones you did. You can teach your kids how not to make the same mistakes that you did. You can literally tell them, here's how I messed up and caused my previous marriage to fall apart. And here's how you can avoid doing that in your own family one day. What do you think you're protecting them from by keeping that stuff under wraps? They're going to learn. You want them to feel betrayed when they learn later? Or you want them to grow when they learn now? It's like, here's some major mistakes I made when I was younger that led me to start a really unhealthy, really destructive marriage. Here's how you can not make those same mistakes. You can say, look, stay away from this type of woman over here. She seems really exciting when you're dating and you're 17. She is not a good time when you're 22 and she's sleeping with your supervisor. She could say, listen, absolutely look for this other type of woman over here. I overlooked your mother when I was young and stupid, but we got together in my 40s. We had you, and she's the one I should have been pursuing all along. Find a woman like that. Listen, you are teaching your sons what kind of husband and father to be. And you are teaching your daughters what kind of man to look for. And that sounds like a burden at first, but it's actually a blessing. Because what this means is, without being perfect, without being flawless, without having nailed everything, whether you have a fantastic marriage that you want to model for your kids, that you want them to imitate, or you've had a string of marriages that completely came crumbling down, regardless of those, whatever your history is, you have the power to teach your children how not to fall into those same patterns. You are blessing your children by preparing them to build a family of their own one day. That's number 3. And here's number 4. This is the one that's going to get me on like 6 o'clock news or something like that, and not in a good way. You are blessing your children by lovingly correcting them. You're blessing your children by lovingly disciplining them. Proverbs 3:11-12 says, my son, do not despise the Lord's discipline or be weary of his reproof or his correction. For the Lord corrects, reproof, disciplines the one he loves, just like a father disciplines the Son in whom he delights. And before we get into to any of this, we need to be clear about what we're talking about when we say discipline, right? Or else a lot of us are going to misunderstand everything that I'm about to say. Listen, there is no one right way to discipline a kid. There's a whole bunch of wrong ways, right? But there is no one right way. And social media, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook Reels, all that stuff, it is absolutely filled with myths. Instagram parents are not real parents. They see their kids like an hour and a half a day and the camera's on the whole time. You're an actual parent. You need to do what works well for you and your kid and your family, right? When I was a little kid, actually, I don't even know where to start the story exactly, but I was probably a hard kid to discipline. You can ask my parents. They'll tell you more details. They probably remember it better than I do because I was experiencing it with kid vision. But, I was a hard kid to discipline because spanking didn't really work past a certain age. It just didn't. I didn't really care about being spanked after a certain point in my life. I was like, oh, it hurts for 5 minutes and then it's over. So what I would do is I would really bring out the waterworks every time I got spanked. I would make it seem like it was so terrible and all of that stuff because I was like, okay, if all I get is spanked when I get in trouble, we're good. I can go play. Eventually, I think my parents figured that out. They realized that spanking just was not effective for little Ryan, so they shifted over to grounding. They started taking away my Pokemon stuff. That was effective. I was like, okay, I don't just like kind of like things. I either have zero interest or get obsessed. Those are like the two modes that I have, right? I was obsessed with Pokemon as a kid. And so I lived in constant fear of getting my Pokemon Game Boy taken away. And so the moment that became a threat, then I was in line. That worked for them. That might not work for you. Something else might work for you. But we have to be clear about what actually is discipline versus what is counterproductive counterfeits, right? There is a difference between spanking a kid and literally punching them in the nose, right? That shouldn't be controversial, but I've had a lot of conversations where apparently it is. Literally beating your kids is not discipline. It's just beating your kids. At exactly the same time, there is a profound difference between putting your kid in timeout and locking them in a room in the basement for hours or days, right? Isolating your kids in the house for months at a time is not the same as grounding them. These are all extremes. But outside of those extremes, there's really no one right way. You got to do what works for you. You got to do what works for your kid. Now, during the time the Proverbs were written, they used something called the rod. You might have noticed that as you've been reading Proverbs. They say, if you spare the rod, you will spoil the child. They say, don't be afraid to strike him with the rod. That sounds pretty intense, right? Until you learn about the rod. They're not talking about any old rod. There was literally a tool called the rod that they used in ancient Hebrew culture. It was a very thin wooden stick. You would strike the kid on a couple of different parts of their body that did not cause significant harm. It's actually really interesting. Being struck with the rod during the time of the Proverbs would have been less painful than just run-of-the-mill, average, everyday spanking today. The point of the rod was really not to hurt the child, even though it might hurt them a little bit. It's still a rod. The point of the rod was to be a physical, discernible, visible reminder that they could literally feel on their body that whatever they did was not okay. The point was not the pain. The point was correction. And so we need to talk about something else real quick. There was a common myth today. The Instagram parents pushed this one pretty hard. There is a common myth today that says you should not discipline your kids. You heard that one? There's a common myth today that says you should not tell your kids no. Always redirect them with a yes, right? And at exactly the same time, all those reels, all those TikToks, all those YouTube shorts, they always say, science has proven that if you discipline your kid, if you whatever, it traumatizes them. People love that word trauma. You know what I'm talking about? Here's the thing. Every honest to God child psychologist will tell you exactly the opposite. They will tell you that children with zero discipline, zero structure, zero boundaries, zero limits, kids with absolute freedom actually become extremely anxious extremely quickly. Why? Because they're freaking kids. They have absolutely no idea what to do or how to live or how to use that unlimited, structureless, boundaryless freedom, right? Like, I'm not even quoting the Bible right now. This is literally the science of child development. Kids need structure. Kids need boundaries. Kids need limits. Kids need clarity. And the way that they learn that is through discipline. Discipline blesses children. How does it bless children? Through the correction that it provides. You are teaching your children how to exist. You are teaching your children when you cross the boundaries, there are consequences. You need to respect those boundaries. When you respect the boundaries, good things happen. When you disrespect the boundaries, bad things happen. And that simple act of creating consistent structure actually has a really radical, positive impact on your child. You bless your children by lovingly correcting them. And number 5, you bless your children by modeling what it looks like to serve and worship the Lord. You knew this one was going to come up. It's a church service. You bless your children every single time you model what it looks like to serve and worship the Lord. One of the most famous verses in the entire Bible, Proverbs 22:6 says, train up a child in the way he should go. Even when he is old, he will not depart from it. Remember that one? The point of this is not if you do it right, your kids will definitely come out right. That is not the point. The Proverbs don't really speak in absolutes like that. There are exceptions to this. Maybe you've lived through an exception to this, right? Maybe you have done absolutely everything you could. You've done pretty much everything right, and a kid still went off the rails for reasons that were totally out of your control. That exists. But the fact that exceptions exist do not change the fact that this is the norm, right? You bless your child by training them up the way they should go. The single greatest blessing you can give your children is preparing them to be faithful followers of Jesus. And again, this does not require you to be perfect. This does not require you to be a spiritual genius. This does not require you to have extensive knowledge of the Bible. All this requires you to do is be present and pretty consistent in pointing your kid toward the Lord. I said pretty consistent. I did not say perfectly consistent. This doesn't have to be big. This doesn't have to be in depth. This doesn't have to be some huge thing that takes up all of your time. Here's just a small example of what this looks like. In the United States, the single most influential religious group is a group called the Dutch Reformed Christians. Have you ever heard of them before? The Dutch Reformed Christians, they're clustered really heavily in the Midwest, especially places like Michigan. If you go to Michigan, you're in Dutch Reformed country. They actually have a saying there: if you ain't Dutch, you ain't much. If you go to college in Grand Rapids or something like that, you're going to have a really hard time marrying a girl who grew up in that culture. But the Dutch Reformed are the most influential Christians in the U.S., and they have the highest rate of passing on their faith from one generation to another, passing it on to their kids, and their kids passing it on to their grandkids, and their grandkids passing it on to their great grandkids, and on and on. Now, most Christians in the U.S. in the 21st century have an extremely low rate of actually passing on our faith, don't we? It's honestly like a really painful thing for us, isn't it? Our kids, for the most part, do not go to church. Our kids do not actively practice the faith in any meaningful way. Our kids do not raise their children in the faith. If our grandchildren actually get to church, it's because we brought them most of the time, right? That's a source of pretty intense pain for us. But if you go to places like Grand Rapids, Michigan, you go to the Dutch Reformed Christians. They've been in the U.S. for 5 or 6 generations thereabout, ever since they came over from Europe. And they can trace their spiritual lineage all the way back to the motherland. And even today, in the year 2025, when the majority of American Christians grow up, leave the church, and never come back, among the Dutch Reformed families, the churches are absolutely filled with great, great, great grandchildren who are carrying the mantle of the faith just as powerfully as their great, 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 great grandparents. Wouldn't that be a dream? Here's the important thing we have to understand. The overwhelming majority of them train up their children in the way that they should go, using a really simple and frankly, probably pretty easy system. A group of sociologists went into a huge study on the Dutch Reformed community in America, and they found the norm is this. There's the obvious things. Compared to the average American Christians, their fathers are significantly more involved in their kids' lives. Their fathers are significantly more involved in their kids' spiritual lives. Their fathers are very consistently at church with the rest of the family, but more than that, they found that the single most important part of what separates these Dutch Reformed Christians is this. You ready for it? Build it up in your mind. They have a 5-minute long family worship most nights out of the week. Spend 5 minutes doing a family worship, kind of a family devotion time, most nights of the week. They sing a song, might be a hymn, or it might be Hillsong. They read a little bit of the Bible, might be a few lines, might be a whole chapter. Then they ask a couple of questions about it. The parents say, son, what do you think about that story? The kids say, why did Noah say this? And the parents say, I'm not sure, but maybe it's this. The kids say, hey, why did Abraham keep lying about his wife? Parents say, I'm not sure, but, I think it might have been because of this. And they give their kids a snack, and they get them ready for bed, and then they move on. That's it. This is not the spiritual Olympics. You bless your kids by modeling what it looks like to serve and worship the Lord, not in these huge, gargantuan, time-consuming, life-consuming ways, but in a whole lot of little, normal, humble, simple, everyday ways that you actually have available to you. And the Lord takes that and he makes it fruitful. And these unbelievably simple and modest acts of faithfulness that you carry out absolutely transform the lives of your children. That's number 5. That is the power that you have as a father. And what all of this means is this: none of what you do as a father is pointless. None of the things that you do as a father are pointless. We're going to put this up on the screen. Every single day you wake up as a father, your work in raising your children is imbued with purpose and meaning and radical importance. Listen, you are not just the assistant manager of your household. What I'm talking about? It's the stereotype. Mom's the manager. Dad's the assistant manager. Dad just executes whatever mom says. You are not just the assistant manager of your household. You are not just there to put food on the table. You are not just there to help pay the bills. You are vitally important to your child in ways you may never have recognized and your child may never realize. But without you, so often, so many things fall apart. And what that means is that you have already won 75% of the battle just by being there. And every step you take to pour into your children more deeply as a father and care for your wife more deeply as a husband is weaving an unbreakable net that the Lord will use to protect and preserve your family and bear incredible fruit for his kingdom through you. And so what I want to do as we close out now is I want to pray for the dads. And I want to pray for the children. And I want to pray for everybody else. If you would bow your heads with me and close your eyes. Let's pray. Father, you worked in a unique and remarkable way through the human fathers in our lives. You radically bless the children of this world through the human fathers in their lives. You have blessed the children of this church through so many of the fathers here. You have blessed the women of this church through so many of the husbands here. I pray that you will use the men of this church to radically change the culture that we live in through their fatherhood. Not only through the fatherhood of their own children, but through the fatherhood of so many other children. I pray that you will move the men of this church to be a presence in the lives of children who have been abandoned by their fathers. That they will mentor them, raise them up, invest in them the way their human fathers should have. And at the same time, I pray for the children. I pray that you will raise these children up to be fathers who are engaged, active, present in the lives of their eventual kids, that you will raise them up into a generation of fathers that doesn't do what so many in the past few generations have done. That you will raise these children up to be a powerful fatherly presence in the lives of their own kids, that you will raise these children up to be the kind of fathers that they wished they had, the kind of fathers that they couldn't have, the kind of fathers they were denied when they were young. At exactly the same time, I pray for all of the women who are trying desperately to pull the Titanic on their own shoulder with a chain. Women who, by no fault of their own, are having to raise their kids on their own. Your word tells us that you have not abandoned the children who were abandoned by their fathers. You have not abandoned the women who were abandoned by the fathers of their children. I pray that for every one of the single mothers in our church, you will come alongside them and you will strengthen them and you will empower them. You will give them the spirit rooted power to do the work of two parents in a way that they never planned to have to do, never wanted to have to do, should not have to do, but have been forced into by circumstance. Let your fatherhood flow through them as they parent their children. Let there be a fatherhood revolution in Franklin County and our whole surrounding community. And let it begin here with your church. And all of God's people said, Amen. If you would, now stand as we respond in worship through song.